Yeah. Turn it up. From the grain to the glass, let's go. Adam makes beer. If you're building a career, from grain to glass, start right here. Adam makes beer. You'll be giving thanks when the malt and the hops meet the yeast in the tank. Yeah. You'll be giving thanks when the malt and the hops meet the yeast in the tank. Started with a vision and a structured plan. Process locked and before you crack a can. Malt in the mash tun, hops in the boil. Yeast bring it to life, that's science and toil. No shortcuts, taking no corners cut. Every batch dialed in, tight and shut. Consistency first, that's how you grow. From the first small brew to a full tap flow. Helping brewers grow, that's the mission. Career development.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 92 of the Adam Makes Beer Industry Pro Podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Matt Winans of Fermentus. Just a couple pieces of Adam Makes Beer news. Make sure to check out adammakesbeer.com. It is the home for all things Adam Makes Beer content. If you want help with social media, if you want to promote your product, if you want to do brew day video stuff, if you want to do consult stuff, hit me up there. Contact form, link to all my resources. Check it out. Also, the Ohio Craft Brewers Association conference is coming up this March 23rd through 26th. I'm going to be there talking recipe formulation. So make sure to get over there. Come see me, say hi. You'll have a beer. I'll have a cocktail. We'll high five. It'll be a good time. Speaking of a good time, let's talk about my friends at Blickman Engineering. Starting a brewery is a big step. Blickman Engineering is here to help. Since 2006, they've equipped hundreds of nano breweries for success. Their new 3.5 barrel Pro Surface electric brewing system cuts maintenance and saves at least 30 minutes per brew day with powerful under kettle heating. From 1 to 15 barrel brew houses to keg washers and grain mills, Blickman has what you need. Ready to go pro? Contact Phil or Tom at ProSeries@BlickmanEngineering.com. Blickman Engineering is a proud sponsor of this channel and loves to help brewers at every stage of their journey. This episode is also brought to you by Senos. Senos turns every tank into a smart tank with real-time fermentation data and analytics, all captured automatically. Ditch manual checks and coming in on weekends. No more guessing. Just clear, actionable insights that help you brew your best batch every time. Brewers use Senos to deliver consistent quality, prevent product loss, and scale with confidence. Brew smarter, waste less, profit more. Visit Senos.com to book a free demo. That is SENNOS.com. Senos, the future of fermentation technology. As I mentioned before, and back for his second interview here on the Adam Makes Beer podcast, Dr. Matt Winans had the #1 episode of 2025. Dr. Matt, good to have you back.
Hey, Adam, it's good to be here. And I'm very excited. I can't believe we were, I can't believe I was your #1 from last year in 2025. That's great news. Thanks for the invite back. Happy to
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. We had a great conversation and I always love, it's always fun getting a wide range of people on the podcast, but this is one of those times where, you and I go back a little while. I remember me picking your brain when you were at Imperial.
Yes.
And then now you're on to Fermentus, and it's always nice when you have those people that just really enjoy talking shop. And enjoy digging into the stuff that they do for a living, man. So how's everything been on your side?
It's been really great. Closed out 2025 with a pretty good year, and 2026 is looking even better. So awesome. It's been pretty good. And yeah, Adam, I have a pretty good memory of, having good conversations, talking shop, sharing a couple of beers. Yeah. I think also, if I really recall way back, I think there was a taxi cab ride that we shared as well with some jokes. What conference was that? Do you remember? I feel
It
like it
could have
was in
been.
the middle,
It could have been CBC.
it was a CBC. I can't remember which one it was.
I
Maybe
can't
like
remember.
2020.
Maybe it was Minneapolis, because I remember spending some time with the Imperial folks there. That was when Nina was still with Imperial. Nina
Yeah,
was my rep,
I think it
and
was. I think it was Minneapolis.
yeah. We had some good times for sure. So, and hey, to everybody in the chat, go ahead and drop your questions in here. Today we are talking yeast, and we have Raphael in here, who said he saw Matt at the Fermentis conference at Tijuana. So you are a man that's all over the globe. If anybody follows you on Instagram, your handle is Where's Winans, and I feel as if it's pretty apropos. You're all over the place, man.
Yeah, I really do enjoy travel, and yeah, even when I was in grad school and university with undergrad, I tried to. I don't know how do you say it. I tried to focus on research projects, things that were very interesting academically, had interesting problems, but also allowed me to explore more of the world. There's got to be a good balance between experience, academic, and travel. So
Sure.
I can split that up 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. I'd be a happy man.
Yeah. So in all of your travels, because I mean, what percentage of the time are you traveling for your work?
It depends on the season and the kind of the events. But it's way more than what I was traveling when I was, back in the lab at Imperial Yeast. It'd be hard to put a number to it. It really just depends
Sure.
on the events.
Yeah, and I know you're all over the place. So when you're traveling like that, do you feel as if it gives you an interesting opportunity to kind of see where the beer scene is at and the different places that you're traveling to?
Absolutely. I absolutely do feel that way. I first entered the beer scene in an area where I think it was pretty not lackluster isn't the right word. It was still emerging market, still developing. I started really getting into craft beer in West Virginia. That's where I went to university.
Sure.
And it's a very small state. And I remember it was a really big deal when Yingling started to be distributed in West Virginia, which is the next state over. It's in Pennsylvania. So it was a big deal then. There was like Honey Browns on the market. And so it was like, that was special. And I think the first craft beer that I can really recognize is Rogue Brewing. They had the ale and the big growlers.
They had those big 22s that they would sell with the screen printed bottles. Yeah.
And so, even within areas in the U.S., there's such different beer markets, craft beer markets within each state. And some places you go to in North America in general, it seems like for some place like Portland, Oregon, where I live now, which I feel like is a very advanced, mature market, but still has a lot of creativity. It seems like it's like you drink some beers that were popular like 10 years ago, like ambers are big in certain areas. Which I enjoy a good amber. Nothing against those, but it's very interesting. I'd say in the Pacific Northwest, what I've seen is IPAs are huge, especially hazy IPAs. I see that in like the New England territories as well. Generally across the board, but especially in those two areas. In the middle, there's a good amount of like amber ales, especially Yeast. I feel like I see a lot more ambers.
Yeah.
And then when you get into like, I guess the northern part of Latin America, it kind of runs across the board. There's still a lot of creativity there. Mexican lagers obviously are pretty big.
Yeah.
The lager train, it's interesting because I see this kind of correlation between places that are just really hot you know, just that's their climate, and they really want a refreshing light lager. And so, yeah, it's super interesting. And, you know, usually when you have places that are cold, you're going to have something dark and warming.
Sure.
Typically, but
sure. Yeah. You know, it was interesting that you kind of talk about the effect that climate can have on that stuff. So, a handful of years ago, my wife and I went down to Austin. We never really had a honeymoon. And so we decided to have one like after 21 years of marriage. And we went down to Austin, and we were hitting up some breweries down there. And we had an absolute blast going to, Austin Beer Garden. And their beer menu it's like Pilsner, Helles. Maybe there's an IPA, but then it's just all pills and Helles. It's all lighter lager. And when you're sitting there, you realize why. So I figured, because we went like in the middle of May, and I figured, okay, well, we're really going to beat the heat. But in May, it was 95 degrees. You know what I mean? And so
Yes.
it really does start to make sense when you get those places where the beer has to make sense with the climate. It's not that you can never do anything else, anything like that, but it definitely makes sense to sit under those, you know, those big live oak trees there outside of that brewery and to crush some Helles or some pills. You know what I mean?
Well, I've definitely been known to crush some Helles or pills. That sounds like a beautiful setting, especially if you're on your honeymoon with your wife. That's a great story. And I have to agree. I think, you know, the climate plays a huge role on what's appealing to someone just normally. And I think, and generally the populations that, you know, I think the populations that are in different areas, for instance, like in Southern America and Brazil or other areas, sometimes sweetness is more acceptable. You know, I personally like a drier finish, but there are some people that just like most things sweet. And I think with my experiences in certain areas of Brazil where there's a bunch of sugarcane production, you know, there's a sweeter finish to the craft beers. There's also any of the drinks that you get down there, like people will drink sugarcane juice. They have these machines that actually just crush the sugar cane and squeeze out the juice, and you drink that straight.
That's
and
crazy.
You can see, it is. It's very sweet. It's pretty good. And, you know, I'm sure if we let that sit out, there'd be some, you know, interesting spontaneous fermentation. As well. And the Brazilian people, they're known for a caipirinha drink with cachaça. And it's a very sweet cocktail. Like limes and it's basically lime, sugar, and cachaça, which is a type of rum.
So,
yeah, when I'm down there too, it's just like they even have special glasses. So I think the drinking culture down there is unique in that the glasses are small, and they usually have about 1 liter, a larger bottle that has its own cooler. You know, it's like an individual koozie type thing, but a little bit different. And you just pour from that, and everyone has these small glasses so that when you drink it, it's continually fresh and cold. It's kind of like a Kolsch style almost, but a little bit different.
Yeah, I love it. I actually have a question coming in. We just touched on lager a moment ago. Colton, I appreciate the question, man. He says, we love fermenters. Any tips on reducing sulfur production in 3470 in Mexican lagers? We have a relatively quick turnaround time and do a couple of quote scrubs through the racking arm to help reduce sulfur before cold crash, after VDK pass. Any advice or tips are appreciated.
And that's from Colton?
Yeah, Colton.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Colton, for the question. It's you know, sulfur is a really interesting topic, and I can touch on a couple points. A lot of brewhouse practices can influence the sulfur production, And I will say that if you're using strain W3470, it's pretty robust. So it's it's something that we like to rely on. It's just like a robust neutral strain. And
Mm-hmm.
there's quite a few factors that go into it. So I think to reduce, what you can do is, and it depends if you're pitching dry or you're pitching liquid yeast or reusing. But if you're reusing your yeast, then I think if you increase oxygen in the beginning, you can reduce some of that SO2, general sulfur notes. I think if you look at your recipe, if you look at the amount of original gravity that you have, so degree Plato, the higher degree Plato you have, generally speaking, you're going to get more sulfur as well. And the higher you go with temperature, you're also going to see some more sulfur production. Typically is what we see. And of course, that changes, based on the yeast strain, which is the single most important aspect of any when you're investigating sulfur. The yeast strain makes a huge impact. Sure. So you're choosing a good strain, and like I said, looking at oxygen, your original gravity, your fermentation temperature, those can all have a pretty big impact. I'd say the other areas that you could investigate, nutrients are pretty important as well. And,
sure.
It's a complicated topic. I've been reading a lot about it recently. I think the first thing that I do when I'm trying to dial in my nutrients is I'm going to look at where my fan level is. And it's important because if I'm a yeast cell and I'm looking at, and I try to picture my yeast as like, I don't know why, but I try to picture them like personalities and like people.
Sure.
They're looking at their environment, right?
Yeah.
And so, if I'm a yeast cell and I'm looking at this fermentation matrix of beer, it depends on what your recipe is, but you really want your carbon and your nitrogen at the correct ratio. Too much carbon, well, not too much, but more carbon is going to stimulate ethanol yield, which is good, right? We want to produce a good amount of ethanol. If our nitrogen content is too heavy versus the carbon, then we're going to stimulate cellular growth. So too much nitrogen and the wrong type of nitrogen too, in the beginning portion, that can have a negative effect on sulfur production. So that's another area to look into as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel as if when troubleshooting issues or just in the topic of yeast nutrient, do you find in general people are either not using nutrient at all, they're using the right amount, or they're using too much? Is there a generalization there with some folks?
Adam, it's kind of difficult to say. I'm hesitant to make any type of generalization about a whole group of people, but what I find is that there's some common misconceptions sometimes about nutrients. And when I first started brewing, right, I would hear things from people, and I'm learning from everyone, right? Everyone's learning from each other. So we would do things. And, one thing I hear a lot from brewers when I first start looking at nutrient is, oh, well, we've always used this product. We just throw it in the hot side. We don't know if it works.
Yes.
And I think I understand the reasoning, right? It seems like a cheap insurance, but if you don't know why you're doing something, or if you don't test and check or consult with people outside of your immediate influence, I think that there's always room to grow. So I would say generally what I see is like brewers will throw some nutrient in on the hot side in the boil or the whirlpool. Don't really know if it has an effect. Maybe they're not measuring their fan to see where they're even starting at. And so typically, we can hear about these. Well, I'll say when people call me, usually it's like, hey, we're not getting attenuation. Like, what's going on? And that's when we start to do a little bit of a deeper dive into what the recipe is and what the steps are and the procedures. So there's a lot of exciting advancements actually in nutrients. It's not the, like, I would say, sexiest thing about yeast, but
no, go for it.
We've done some research on nutrition, so it's pretty nice. It's pretty interesting. As I said, carbon to nitrogen ratio is going to be really important to start with, but there's these whole slew of other micronutrients and macronutrients and survival factors and lipids that are, and vitamins that are playing a huge role that I think is a little bit understudied or maybe under talked about. So last year we presented at the ASBC. We partnered with some breweries and we did a little bit of research. And so there's some ASBC meetings, I guess meeting takeaways or PowerPoints that are floating out there that talk about it. Is that I hate to stop my talk, but is that a mug with your face on it?
It is a mug.
Are you drinking
face
out of a mug with your face on it?
This was a gift. This was a gift from my children. Keep in mind that I have kids anywhere from 24 years old to 4 years old. So my older kids get kind of the dual meaning, the funny meaning behind this. But when I first trained into the industry, my buddy Bill used to call me his brew baby because he was training me in. Okay, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And then on the flip side, Bill would be my brew daddy, and we laughed at that, right? And so this brew baby, brew daddy relationship thing became like a running joke. And then my kids figured out, well, okay, the whole there's kind of a joke in there somewhere, right? And so for Christmas, they got me this mug with my face on it, and the other side says "Brew Daddy" on it. Now, I will say this:
Brew Daddy Adam. Okay.
I had a friend of mine
that's an Instagram handle.
No,
I mean,
it is
you should
not
change
an
it.
Instagram handle because I had a dear friend of mine say like, "Hey, so is this like is Brew Daddy? Is this like a branding thing you want to run with?" And I'm like, "Absolutely not. This is not the direction I need to be going." But anyways, the funny thing is I threw a copy. You can actually order this in my merch store, and it's the number one selling item in the merch store.
Well, that was a great segue for you there.
Not that the merch store is blowing up, but yeah, it is too. So yeah, my kids actually got that for me. So
hey, with that being said, hey listeners, make sure and support Adam Makes Beer, or
jump over to AdamMakesBeer.com and you can find the merch store. You can get hoodies, t-shirts, maybe you can get it all. Hey, so speaking of sulfur, Raphael had a follow-up question, which I think is really interesting. And he said, could copper sulfate be a good option for sulfur compound reduction? We do know that sulfur as a compound in beer can be very volatile. And so when we're talking about, the earlier question was talking about trying to scrub sulfur just simply through a CO2 rouse into the headspace of the tank, then being able to vent that. It is a volatile compound, but I have heard people talk about utilization of copper as a way to scrub sulfur from a beer. One, is it effective? And two, are there drawbacks to that?
Well, I'm sure there's pros and cons with most things that we do in the brew house. And can it be effective? I've read a lot about copper being used for this purposes. So from everything I've read, it seems like a pretty good option. Mm-hmm. I personally have never tried it. But it doesn't mean that you should. From what I've read, the copper sulfate additions, they should be able to reduce at least H2S, but H2S is pretty, as you mentioned, volatile.
Yeah.
That means if you're targeting anything else, like any type of thiols as well, you're going to be removing those. But it depends on what flavor profile you're wanting. If you're getting too much of the sulfur notes, that's definitely a way I think you could mitigate some of those and focus on maybe the maltier characters that you're trying to get. For a long time in the distilling industry, sulfur was was a big sticking point for a lot of people.
Sure.
So that's why you see the copper built pipes and doing some experiments or with distilling too. You can pack columns with copper mesh, copper wire to reduce those volatile sulfur compounds that can be off notes. So I think copper additions, I think they have a real role in there. And
Sure. Do you have you had experience professionally working with the spirit side of things?
A little bit. We have some spirits yeast, and when I was doing research in grad school, I started working and consulting with some distilleries. So there were some special projects that we worked on, mostly with strain selection, doing a little bit of microbe training and laboratory technique stuff. But yeah, there's several yeast strains that we have specially selected and that we've gone through a bunch of sensory and analytical analysis. And also, I'd say a lot of time we can work custom products for distillers. It's one of our segments as well. So, I mean, we're everything yeast when it comes to like flavor and fermentation and beverage. So we're doing a lot of stuff in the beverage general sector as well. Trying to,
It's always such a fascinating thing. Yeah, it's a fascinating space. I have some things in the hopper for 2026. Maybe at some point you might see some production day video, some Adam Makes Spirits kind of things, because I love the fact that there are, of course, overlaps with some of the concepts, some of the science, some of the different things like that. But yeah, I'm hoping to slip over the border into Kentucky some point this year and get in and do some stuff on the distillery side, just because there's so many. I don't know if you want to say it's like two languages with the same root. You know what I mean? So there's definitely those similarities, but it's just always so fascinating to see the production differences, the things that are concerns and things that are not concerns compared to beer, to spirits. So anyways, are you a spirits guy, by the way? Do you like spirits?
I do. Yeah, I do like spirits. I think that's really interesting, Adam. There's a lot of good content. There's a lot of good people out there in the spirit sector, and the mug is killing me. But the University of Kentucky, they have a James Beam Institute. They're doing a lot of good work down there.
Yeah.
This year at the ASBC in Seattle, the week of August 17th, which is my birthday week. They are partnering with the CIBD, the Chartered Institute of Brewing and Distilling Sciences. I think I may get the acronym slightly wrong. But there should be some distilling content there as well. So
yeah.
I think it's like you said, it's two languages with the same root.
Sure.
I think the brewery just has to be a little bit cleaner.
Yeah, I was actually talking to a person connected to the Jim Beam Institute, because that's at University of Kentucky, I believe, which isn't too crazy far from me. So that reminds me, I need to send a follow-up email. I might be doing some stuff with them this year. But before we go too far,
because we've got some projects.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And just so you know, when we do end up jumping off stream, hold on just a little bit. Once we're off stream, and I'll chat with you just so I don't lose you. But yeah,
copper
definitely.
Copper sulfate. It should be good to use in the brew house. It should reduce some of that sulfur, and depending on, and I really need to read a little bit more of the science on there, but having some equipment with copper, it could make an impact as well.
Sure.
Just in the brew house.
Well, we had chatted before going live about some different topics that we wanted to dig into. The first time, gosh, we got into a lot. We got into a lot of stuff. So there were a few more things that we had talked about, kind of taking a deeper dive on, and one is taking a deeper look into bottle conditioning. My experience with bottle conditioning, a lot of that happened on the homebrew side, because for a long time it was the primary way that I fermented beer or carbonated beer in bottles. I did eventually go over to keg, and then I would carbonate in the keg, force carbonate in the keg, and then I would fill bottles off of that. It is kind of funny because even I was talking to some people, and I guess when you do something for long enough, you become an old guy. But we are talking about packaging, and we all talk in language of cans these days. But you think back to when I first started getting in, and I remember receiving huge, very heavy pallets of 12-ounce long neck glass bottles, throwing them in the Mahine. A little throwback for anybody who's done some stuff on that side. But when we talk about re-fermentation and package, a lot of times I think about my time on the homebrew side. But even now I see people canning on the homebrew side. Things have really evolved as far as that goes. But
you see people canning on the homebrew side,
bro. There's people that are doing insane stuff. The gear they sell for homebrew size stuff right now is, I'm talking conical glycol cooled jackets.
I've seen that.
They have, they have they're selling like vessels that you can purge and pressurize to drop dry hops into a vessel, so your vessel stays sealed. People are doing wild stuff on that side. It's really, really crazy. People are doing a lot of closed transfers now, which, I mean, back in my day, it was still, I'm purging out a corny keg and I'm still using that little auto siphon. Yeah, right. And now people are doing always break. Yeah, of course. Yeah, it can all those little micro cracks in it.
Yeah, I've got like 4 downstairs, and maybe one of them works.
But bottle conditioning it's an excellent tool. It has uses across a wide range of beer types, and bottle conditioning is just an interesting practice that you can leverage when done well. It's a way to package with low dissolved oxygen. There's a lot of interesting things about that. So why don't we start dipping into the topic of bottle conditioning a little bit?
Yeah, I do think it's interesting. For me, I think the interest first starts at the practical level, right? Mm-hmm. So every time that I've gone to some place that's really, really proud of their beers, mm-hmm. It's like, hey, we even do this, and they almost kind of romanticize it, the bottle re-fermentation or the bottle conditioning. Mm-hmm. But when you take the time and effort, I really do feel like it makes a better beer. Mm-hmm. There's some science behind it, and I believe it was Boston Brewing Company. I forget exactly what it was. It was at one of the conferences, but they had a anniversary retirement party for someone who had worked there for a very long time. And they followed their recipe, and maybe I'm getting some slight details confused, sure. But they had followed this recipe that was designed by him. It was like his ultimate recipe. And the finishing touch was, very strictly enforced bottle conditioning.
Yeah.
And so we've even seen some research out of Belgium with some pretty popular Belgian blonde ales. They're about 8.5% ABV, and they go through a re-fermentation as well. And so being a company, Fermentis that is, being a company that's formed basically out of Belgium, beer culture, because the campus is right there on the border between Belgium and France. So there's a lot of research and a lot of practice out there, and most people use our F2 strain. It clings to the bottom of the glass. It makes a good, ferments at a pretty high ABV. So you shouldn't have any issues with, bottle reconditioning. But speaking analytically about this, because it's easy to romanticize.
Sure.
But there's oxygen scavenging, which I believe you brought up earlier. So
Yeah.
when you're pitching live yeast in there, those yeast are going to go around, they're going to try to grow, and they will scavenge those oxygen cells, the molecules that is, and they'll take that into their cell and use that for metabolic activity, and it reduces the oxidation that's happening inside your bottle, which would increase the shelf life.
Sure.
And based on the research that we've done on campus, we also see, and this is when we compare bottle conditioned to CO2, there's a reduction of aldehydes as well, which is going to give you some like warty, stale, bready flavors. So there's a reduction of that as well with live cells being added. And it depends also on the strain. The strain makes a large impact too, right? Yeah. So like I said, we have F2, that's the one we recommend, but you can also use whatever you have at the brew house. We've done some research with S33. We've done some research with Brettanomyces. We've done some research with another Saccharomyces cerevisiae strain, T58. That one's a POF positive. And so we do see analytically a little uptick in the phenolic flavors, or at least the analytical aspect of phenolics when you're using a phenolic strain, which makes total sense.
Sure.
Not that we've been able, and I guess it depends on what the priming sugar is and the amount, but when we've tested this, it hasn't been above threshold. So sensory, it shouldn't really make an impact. But I guess it also depends on, your priming sugar, how much you're adding.
Sure.
But, I think generally the idea with bottle conditioning, right, is that you're adding yeast cells, or you're retaining those yeast cells, give them sugar so that they can then make the carbon dioxide with those tasty ethanol sensory molecules, right?
Sure.
Some higher alcohols. And then that becomes part of the effervescence, right?
Yes.
I've heard just from talking with people that the bubbles are smaller. I don't have any science behind that.
Sure.
But, I've heard that.
I'll also say though, and this is whether or not, whether we're talking, utilizing spunding in the FV and then getting more of your carbonation through, head pressure in the FV, a gentle transfer to your bright tank. I've found that the less I'm forcing CO2 into solution through a carb stone, the better foam that I get. It's longer lasting, and especially on the spunding side. If I can manage to get that beer over to the fermenter with not much additional CO2 needing to be pushed through a stone. And again, it's anecdotal because I'm one guy. And but I will say though that I am somebody that is. I try not to lean on anecdote because I think there are so many, this was my experience things that just kind of becomes gospel. But I will say anytime that I can introduce CO2 through head pressure, some way that is a little bit more gentle, I feel like foam and foam stability is just better. So yeah, I hear you on that front. I have a question with the bottle conditioning thing. One of the things that I think, and maybe this is just a reaction to hazy beer, and I don't have any problem with hazy beer. I'm not one of those folks.
Okay.
But I do think one
of those folks is you like it or you hate it.
No, one of those folks that's like, oh, it's garbage just because it's hazy or whatever. You know what I mean?
Sure. Just to be clear.
But I will say, though, that I feel as if because we have gotten so used to seeing haze in beer, I think on some level, haze in beers that are supposed to be bright has become a little bit more normal. But I will say, like,
more lenient.
Yeah, a little bit more lenient. But the flip side is there's some beer styles that are supposed to be clear, and they're gorgeous when they're clear. So if you have a style like that, so say you have a Belgian Golden Strong that when you're pouring it into the glass, you want it to be, read the newspaper through it, clear, clear, clear. Would it be a good idea to actually filter that beer? And then in the tank that you're going to be packaging it out of, you could add back whatever simple sugar or whatever you're going to use as your priming. So in a situation where you want to have a clear beer out of the bottle conditioned package, is it a good idea to try to remove as much as that yeast as you can before introducing your additional sugar and yeast and your priming or bottle conditioning yeast?
Well, that's a difficult question. I mean, I think in essence, what you want to do is you want to limit the amount of yeast that's in there.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the more yeast that you have, the more turbidity or the more, maybe unclear factors. I know it's not the right terminology,
Sure.
but the more yeast that you have in there, the more bacteria or anything, you're going to reduce that ability to read the paper through the glass.
Mm-hmm.
With a very crystal clear. Said, I also believe that having yeast in clear beer doesn't make it not clear. So you can't have yeast cells in there and it still can be brilliant.
Sure.
So I would have to say, and I would think too, that with the right pitching rate, the right cell count, that there's no reason you should have that you shouldn't get a clear beer.
Sure.
Even with bottle conditioning.
Sure. There's one other note that I had on this. How you said, what was the name of the first bottle conditioning yeast that you were talking about from Fermentis?
F2.
F2.
Remember Fermentis 2.
Fermentis 2.
So you use Fermentis. I'm going to say Fermentis 1 for primary, right? And now you can do your secondary fermentation with F2.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't think that's why we named it that, but I just kind of made that up.
That works for me. How resilient is that to pH? Do you know off the top? Because sometimes I know that people can put all sorts of different beers into bottle. Tart beers, non-tart beers. Do you know if there's a pH window? And that might be a little bit of a very specific question. Pardon me. But is there a pH consideration when choosing a bottle conditioning yeast like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what I do know, I can't say, hey, in your beer at this pH,
sure,
this is fine. But what I can say is that F2 is the one that we've chosen for a variety of reasons, not just flavor, not just be able to, remain stuck to the bottle so it doesn't inhibit the clarity of your beer, but it also is adaptable to a wide range of alcohol tolerances and pH. So,
nice.
With a lower pH and with higher ABV, it should be fine. But if there's issues, that's when we, depending on whatever the matrix is, that's when we kind of get on a call, or we can chat with someone to figure out what would be the best solution. Because there are yeasts that are very different, strain to strain, within the Saccharomyces species. I think there's probably, it's getting down to the genetic level. Between the nucleotides, I think it's between strain to strain and Saccharomyces cerevisiae, I think is about 0.5% difference in the total genome.
Sure.
If we go Saccharomyces total, so let's say comparing Saccharomyces cerevisiae to Arbicola or Eubayanus or Paradoxus, then I think we're about almost 25% difference in the DNA, which is huge.
Okay.
That's that's about the difference of the DNA of a man to the DNA of a bird. So it's a huge variety. So within Saccharomyces, and even within Saccharomyces cerevisiae. So there's a wide range of strains that we can help choose. And some of those are going to be more adaptable to pH. Some of them are going to be more adaptable to higher alcohol.
Sure.
But there's definitely a solution out there. We've got a huge bank.
Yeah. Is there a calculator that is available online through Fermentus as far as building out or a recommended calculator for beer volume, CO2 in solution, sugar needed, different things like that?
Yeah, we have quite a few calculators that are on the Fermentus app, and also I think we're our BSG. They're one of our bigger distributors, so they also have a couple of resources as well that you can check out.
Sure.
I mean, I've used the ones online before as well when I was homebrewing. I still use those sometimes too.
Sure.
Go ahead. Before we move on real quick, I had a couple other things that came to the top of my head.
Go for it.
With capturing the CO2, we don't do anything with capturing CO2, but I've visited some breweries that have been doing the CO2 capture, and it's super interesting. And some of them have said that they basically wait till about 1/3 or halfway through fermentation, because that first beginning part of the fermentation has a lot of other compounds in the CO2 gas. And so it was super interesting for me to see that. And I think the oldest, because I know there's a lot of new technology behind this, but I think it's also been done for a long time in other ways. Sure. One of the oldest brewer houses that I've seen, I had equipment recently from about 100 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, they had a mash press that was made out of cast iron.
Oh, wow.
It was a monster.
Yeah.
And it was working. And so there's no reason to replace it.
Sure.
I think they hand make their screens.
Yeah.
But they also had a CO2 capture machine, and it was a giant balloon with a motor. It was huge. The balloon, it seriously was huge, and it was probably about the size of a 18-wheeler truck. That's how big the balloon was, and it was long. And you could tell when they started capturing, because it would just start to fill up slowly, and you could hear it.
Yeah.
So I mean, the CO2 capture, the bottle re-fermentation, I think that's it's a lot of people are kind of looking into now, just obviously for environmental purposes, but also for sensory benefits. And there's benefits to using Saccharomyces yeast. There's also benefits if you want some different kind of flavor diversity using Brettanomyces.
Absolutely.
And we see basically a 3-stage development of fermentation, bottle conditioning character with Brettanomyces. We have BR8 is a Brettanomyces bruxellensis. It's our dry Brett. I think it's the only dry Brett in the world, actually.
Yeah.
And so we get good results, stabilization of character about 1 month in, but between, I would say 6 months is when you get kind of the starting to become mature phase, the mid phase, and then up to about 9 months, then you have a mature phase of Brett character. But this all depends on your fermentation, your bottle re-fermentation conditions. Temperature plays a huge role here.
Yeah.
And one other thing is, if you're using dry yeast to re-ferment, you want to rehydrate first. That's a pretty big one. Dry yeast, at least the stuff from Fermentus, the active dry yeast that we produce, we've done studies on it as far as rehydration goes. And with viability, it doesn't really matter whether you're using tap water or distilled water. When I was homebrewing, it was a huge talk
Sure.
about that. But it doesn't seem to matter. The biggest factors that really play a huge role in viability is how you treat the yeast for the first 15 to 20 minutes, and whether or not you have alcohol or other toxins in the solution.
Yes.
So if you throw dry yeast into an already halfway fermented or all the way fermented beer or wort matrix, it's not going to be good for the yeast viability. And the other thing that's to be avoided is putting it into the matrix, the wort for rehydration, whether it's direct pitch or whether it's a rehydration tank, and then doing a really I guess, a really violent stirring or a really violent pump, because you can shear
Okay.
the yeast that way.
That makes sense.
So gentle and
sense.
no alcohol is the way to go for
Yeah.
20 minutes at least.
Yeah.
20 minutes,
That makes a
15.
lot of sense. I have and this is a bit of a triumphant return. I think it's been a moment since we've seen this person in the chat, but we have the wonderful, the powerful September and June making an appearance in the chat with this question. I know that they are nerds for this style, lovers of this style. So we have a Hefeweizen question for you. The question from September and June is, do you have a Weihenstephaner Weiss yeast directly from them? If so, per 10 barrels, what would the pitch rate be using a 500 gram brick? So he and I have had this conversation before, and so just so you understand what he's saying, we've had conversations before about different yeast manufacturers list strains as the same. Okay, so you can get 3470 from 7 different manufacturers, but
Right.
are they all actually the same strain? So when he says, is your Weihenstephaner Weiss wheat beer strain directly from them? That's what he's talking about. Like, is it actually of origin? Is it from their hef? And yes, the floor is yours.
Yes. So when it comes to the origins, right, it's kind of an interesting topic. I've worked I did R&D. I was innovation lead for Imperial Yeast, and now I'm with Fermentis. So when it comes to the liquid yeast, we have done some comparisons, and I would say a lot of the strains out there are very similar when they say it's something that's similar to this. But what is definitely true is that depending on how you bank, store, and grow the same or similar strains, they can have a different impact on how that strain would perform. Right?
Okay.
So that does make a difference. And when you're talking about buying same or similar strains from different suppliers, for dry yeast, for example, right? You might buy 500 grams, what we call bricks. And based on supplier to supplier, you are not getting the same cell counts in that. A 500 gram brick is not a 500 gram brick, is not a 500 gram brick.
Okay.
The cell density matters. So for us at Fermentis, without tooting the horn so much, you guys can read about this on Raw BSG. They've done a comparison between yeast suppliers and their COAs, their technical data sheets.
Yes.
We have the highest cell density, and we also have the lowest cell count of anything that you don't want in there. So
yes,
the purest yeast possible with the highest density, it comes from Fermentis. That's true. So saying that the same strain is the same strain isn't necessarily true, because they're different products. When I was at Imperial, one of the things that was unique to us there was that we would pour the direct So one of the things that was unique is that we used to pour the cell count specific for that beer, which was a custom pour. So it's almost a different product. Genetically speaking, they can be similar. Okay. Maitreya Dunham has done a lot of work on how the same or similar strains of yeast can have population dynamics and population genetic shifts over time. So that is palpable on the changes that happen. So that's another factor too, because let's say you have strain A that goes from Fermentis to strain B from another supplier to strain C. By the time it gets a strain or company C, then it may be quite different actually.
Sure.
Now, whether it's worse or better. Doesn't who's to say?
Sure.
But that's what I would say about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. Do you have any specific tips with this strain? Because in my experience, so September and June has helped me a lot with the Heffa style beers that I have made. I was running into this. Yeah, I had run. Yeah, that Dunkelweizen kind of that whole range, and I had some issues and really wasn't satisfied with those beers. And then he recommended some different pitching rates, some different approaches to oxygen. Are there things that you recommend with your dried strain as far as ways to approach that? Things that might be a little bit different pitching rate wise, O2 wise, anything like that?
Yeah. So what I can say is that from the second part to the question, or maybe it was the first part, but
sure.
When it comes to the Hef strain from Weinsteffen Brewing, that is officially licensed through us. So the W and W68 is from Weinsteffen. The W and W3470 is from Weinsteffen. So as far as I know, we're the only one that has that license and that has the original strain. So everything from the market is more likely coming from Fermentis or a derivative of that. So when it comes to tips on using W68 in a brew for Hefeweizen, I typically underpitch a little bit. And I hope I don't get in trouble by saying that, but it's the truth. There's the amount of yeast, the amount of biomass, the strain background, obviously the degree Plato, the original starting gravity, and temperature all play a role.
Yep.
Now, when you're pitching W68 and you're going to pitch it on the low end, I'll say that, right? So we have a range. I believe it's 40 to 80 grams per hectoliter.
Yeah.
So if I'm off by a couple grams, it's the bottom number that I'm talking about pitching at. And you don't use oxygen with dry yeast, at least our dry yeast. So the way that it's grown in the factory or the manufacturing facility is that once it gets to a certain stage, there are like nutrient and environmental restrictions and additions that are put in place so that the cell wall becomes very robust to go through the drying process.
Yeah. And
so that cell wall robustness, it also shaves the expense and the practice for the brewer on their first pitch. Not that means they don't have to oxygenate, but if you really want to, you obviously still can. It's a practice not needed with the first pitch. Once it's liquid, again, I would probably oxygenate. Actually, for sure I would. We do recommend going with some oxygenation above about 15 degree Plato once you start getting the high gravity. So there may be some benefits there. But in general, you're going to want to pitch on the lower end of that recommended range, and then no oxygenation. And it depends on the flavor profile that you're looking for, whether you want more of that isoamyl acetate or more of the phenolic clove. Then you can work with some of those other recipe parameters. And I will say, if the W68, because I mean it's perfect for a Hefeweizen, right? A Hefeweizen fermentation, this is going to be number one best choice. But if you want to tone it down a little bit and go into something like a Belgian wit, or maybe just like a mix between an American Hefeweizen and a Belgian Hefeweizen, then BW20 is a strain that we have that is a little bit reduced on those on that clove flavor. So it's a little bit more subtle. It's not going to be the same as using, US05 or a Chico strain to ferment your wheat. But I would say those are your kind of three options on depending on what kind of character that you want to go with.
Sure. Well, listen, we have a couple more topics, but we're also running around an hour. Do you want to keep rolling through these last few and then wrap up? Or okay? Just so you know, Dr. Matt Dr. Matt just got off a 20-hour flight, so he's being a very good sport here, and you're hanging in there, man. You're in line, right? The hours of flight are not showing.
Well, when I'm talking with Adam Makes Beer, I can't give anything less than my best. And
All right,
that's what I'm here to do. So.
All right, well, let's keep it rolling. And we had talked about wanting to discuss yeast propagation a little bit. And it's an interesting topic because so often, a lot of times when we're talking dry yeast, it's really a way to go ahead and, you can just use another brick. Right. It's a good way of building that up. And propagation is not always really kind of thought about in the same way as we do when we're purchasing liquid strains. What are some of your thoughts on yeast propagation when through the lens of dry yeast?
Well, Adam, I think that's it's an interesting question for sure. For me, it's a kind of difficult question too, because I see value in propagating. I also see a lot of value in, pitching dry yeast or pitching propagated from a facility, right? Like a liquid pitch. I would say if it's something that you're trying to do, it's possible. I think also a lot of times it seems like, when I first started looking into it, and I've done it a lot of different ways, from my home brew lab in Morgantown to liquid to dry. I've done it quite a lot. And at certain times, at certain scales, I have to say, it makes way more sense to go with like a dry pitch. And I was talking with someone today, helping them out, and they were like, "Hey, yeah, I've got X thousands of dollars in grains and this X amount of hops. Like, I'm pitching $100 worth of yeast. It's like, how much am I saving?
Yeah,
how much am I at risk?" But if you want to propagate, there's nutrients that I would definitely look into.
Okay.
It depends on what your work matrix is that you're growing it in. So I'm assuming that people are going to be using work matrices, and if you're using something that's like all malt, generally it's pretty sufficient on some stuff. I would say late addition of nutrients, so you give all the bioavailability to the yeast is good as long as it's obviously sterile. You don't want to introduce anything that's not sterile when you're propagating. That's one of the most important things. If you're using something that's a Pilsner, maybe it has some adjuncts in there, there's definitely some nutrients that you will benefit highly from putting in, because, vitamins, lipids, survival factors, also making sure your carbon and nitrogen balance is skewed heavily towards the nitrogen. That's going to be more important for doing cellular growth. If you're in like a organic brewery, sourcing zinc and some other nutrients that you want to add might be a little bit difficult. But if anyone has questions about it, happy to answer. I'm still doing research. I'm still learning about it myself. Sure. I've been doing it for 10 years and I still learn something new every day, I feel like.
Absolutely. Well, I've got a question from Trevor here, and Trevor wants to know, when brewing 2 batches into 1 fermenter over the course of 2 days. So he's on a 10-barrel system. So that means 10 barrels of wort is going in on day 1 and 10 barrels of wort is going in on day 2. What volume should you base your pitch rate on when using dry yeast? And also, should you oxygenate the first batch, both, or none?
So officially what we recommend is, and it makes a lot of sense, is if you're going to be fermenting 20 barrels, let's say it's 20 barrels,
Mm-hmm.
then you should pitch the amount of yeast for 20 barrels.
Mm-hmm.
The rehydration, and some strains are quicker than others, right? The rehydration period
Absolutely.
can be a little bit long, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, until it's like active, a lot of strains are very quick, but it also depends on the temperature and everything else. So, officially, the easiest way to do it and the most foolproof way to do it is to pitch the amount of yeast for the final volume.
Yeah.
With that said, if you're using like a liquid, right, which is a little bit more active, then at least in the very first initial sprint, then what you can do is you can do a little mini prop, but that's a little advanced. If you do that, oxygenate at least in the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do anything mid fermentation, I'd have to really just see what your flavor profile is. That's not something that I would really recommend. Oxygenation in the very beginning is what I found to be the most successful. But as I said earlier, we're always learning from each other. So if someone's really successful in that, feel free to share. But the easiest way to go about it, again, is to pitch the right amount for the total fermentation volume up front.
Awesome.
I will say too, and one thing to extrapolate on a little bit more. So there's like, again, depending on like your wort matrix, right? If you're doing nutrient additions, there's benefits to adding at different times. A lot of times, like I said earlier in the very beginning, people are going to be adding just some kind of, I don't know, yeast extract or something that they haven't fully investigated. They just add it up front at the whirlpool. There's benefits to adding nutrients at the right time as well. So, if you're working on propagating or fermenting, you might want to consider adding sterile stuff to the fermenter at the second batch addition, or halfway through sugar break or a third through sugar break. There's different timings depending on what we're going for. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. We'll have one more here and then we'll wrap up. We had talked before about maybe digging a little bit into like thiolized type lager strains. So first off, if you can explain this concept of thiolized around yeast strains and what that means.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely not the one that has trademarked or done any kind of serious work around like thiolizing, or whatever you may call it. But there are thiols that are produced through yeast fermentation. This has been true for a very, very long time. So there are strains that are not so great at it, and there's strains that are good. There's strains that are better. There are strains that have been modified genetically to do this as well, and they have different levels. I don't have experience with any of the genetically modified stuff, but from our experience at Fermentis doing fermentations with different lager strains, we, through a partnership with a university in Belgium, we found a lager strain that produces thiols. It produces more than any of the other strains that we've surveyed. And so this was done a couple years ago, at least, this research. And since then, we've taken it, put it through trials. This new strain of ours is SH45.
Okay.
It's a lager strain. So you can buy that. You can get with BSG. You can call us up. We can help get a sample to you. But there are benefits to doing natural fermentation. Not saying anything against other types of fermentations, but there are benefits to using SH45 to produce thiols. And one of the things that's interesting is that based on the academic paper, and I can send you the paper afterwards, or maybe we can send a link to it or something if anyone's interested. But, there's this idea, this dogma, right, that to have a thiol, you have to go from like a glutathione bound version to a cysteine bound, and then that cysteine bound has to go through this conversion into like a free thiol. And I'd say generally that's pretty true. It has to be glutathione to cysteine to being imported into the cell to being free, and then it becomes can go through esterification as well.
Mm-hmm.
So a classic one would be like 3MH to 3MHA for the esterification. What we do see though too, which is also true, is that some lager strains that we've surveyed, they are able to seemingly bypass that glutathione to cysteine bound conversion and do this other pathway where they're just kind of converting the glutathione bound into a free thiol. And so that's what really piqued our interest about SH45, and that it produces a good amount of it too. We did some calculations. At least I've done some just reading papers that have like investigated the amount of thiols that are in beer, and we should be about like one flavor threshold whenever you do the fermentations with SH45, and so it should be like a nice subtle thiol character, because I feel like, and everyone's different, and the thiols itself are very different, right? There's many different types of thiols out there that give you many different types of flavors and that have different thresholds altogether. So,
sure.
But I feel like whenever I talk with people, it's like you either love it or you hate it, and
yeah.
Typically there's a bell curve, and most fermentations fall somewhere in the middle of that bell curve where generally it's pleasing. But it's thiol is one of those ones that kind of don't follow that normal bell curve, I don't think.
Sure.
And I think it's still kind of new, so I hope we still need to do research on all these topics and all these different thiol producing.
Well, and I think too, I think a lot of times people want to they want to latch on to a product or a raw material and think that it's going to be the new thing, like in the way that Citra has dominated, the way Mosaic has dominated, things like that. And I think really, big picture is a lot of these things are tools. And the more time goes on, it's more than likely we're going to understand how to use these things with finesse, as opposed to using them as a sledgehammer. Because and maybe it's just a U.S. craft beer thing, but I think we tend to go sledgehammer with new ingredients and new ideas. And in some ways, there's really nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with finding the high-end limit of something and then rolling back, and right?
And toning it down. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
No, there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yes.
I agree. It's got to be. It's a tool, right? Each yeast strain's a tool in the box.
Yes.
Each ingredient's a tool, and so it depends on how you wield it. And so,
sure,
that's the truth for any yeast supplier, any hop supplier, anything like that. So.
Well, I tell you what, Dr. Matt, there's one more, and it's a quick question, so you can give a quick answer. It is a follow-up, and he's getting this extra question in just because he's so loved. Quick question, if possible, with W68, does temp matter in regards to flavor profile? For example, higher temperatures equals more banana, low equals less banana, etc.
Yes. So your starting gravity and your temperature are going to matter. I wish that was a quick one. I'm going to have to refer back to my notes, but I can follow up. It would take me a couple of minutes here, but
no worries. I
would say the safest answer for this is at least shooting for the middle of the temperature range that we recommend on the TDS, and based on how that translates into your own fermentation vessels in your system, you can either dial it up a couple notches or dial it down on the fermentation temperature. And happy to follow up with a quick note on that either way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Dr. Matt, as always, it's great to have you on. I appreciate you pushing through as you spent a whole lot of time in the air today. So yeah, as always, I really appreciate it.
Well, I have to admit, Adam, I've been talking with you. It's a great conversation, and I feel a lot of energy. A lot of energy, especially talking with you. So I'm
well, awesome.
You re-energized me. I have my second win. I'll be at CBC.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
Sure. Philadelphia.
We'll have to connect, man. Philly.
Can't wait.
Yeah, I think it's my first time to Philadelphia.
Can't wait to go to CBC. I'm going to be at the ASBC meeting.
Nice.
I'll be at the District Northwest MBAA. That's here. That's here in Oregon and Hood River. So I'm going to be giving a small talk on more detailed content around sulfur, and that includes some thiols and just fermentation practices as well as yeast metabolism. So deep dive into sulfur. If you're in the area, please come and check that out. Ask some questions. And I think that's about it. Oh, the MBAA meeting, I think this year is in Virginia Beach. So that should be interesting.
Yeah. Well, awesome, man. Yeah, thanks once again.
Thanks,
absolutely. Good to see everybody in the chat tonight. Thanks for all your questions. We weren't able to get to everything, but as always, we appreciate seeing you in here. Next week, I will be probably Monday or Tuesday. I need to look at my schedule, but it's been a little bit since I have done a career development pod, and we're going to have some topics surrounding burnout, things, and it is something that has come up for me recently because I've had a bunch of change going on. We've been very busy, and there's some things that I've needed to do lifestyle wise that have helped make that easier, and so it's kind of on my brain a little bit, and so we'll kind of just dig into taking care of ourselves a little bit. The industry can be hard on us. So you can look forward to that next week. But beyond that, make sure to check out the brew day that I have with Mad Tree. I have a brew day coming out March 1 with my friends at Archival up in Michigan. And yeah, just as always, I appreciate everybody liking, supporting, and definitely hitting up my sponsors, both Blickman and Senos. I just added Senos on. Make sure to give them some love. Hit them up for a demo on that sensor technology that they have. They help me feed my family. So it's a big help, everybody. So as always, be good to your people and love to you all. And we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Thank you, everyone, for your question. Thanks, Adam.
Absolutely. Cheers, man.